What's up, gang? My name's Brennan. Let's talk stocks. Today, I want to talk about one of the least talked about stories from one of the most well-respected investors on the planet. We're going to talk about the kind of strange, kind of confusing, kind of just overall bizarre story of Benjamin Graham's best investment ever. Everybody knows Benjamin Graham, right? He's the father of value investing. He was the teacher of Warren Buffett. He had a lot of concepts that investors still use today, such as the margin of safety and just the entire idea of what it means to be a value investor. He was known for very stubbornly adhering to all of his really strict investment principles through all different times and conditions of the market. Market's going up, market's going down, he's doing the same exact thing the whole time. Yet, with all of this grit and determination, Benjamin Graham's best investment ever actually broke a bunch of his own rules. And what's more than that is that Benjamin Graham himself actually said that his best investment ever was more luck than anything else. So what was this best investment ever that we're talking about today? It's actually GEICO stock. GEICO was founded in 1936 by a couple named Leo and Lillian Goodwin as the government employees insurance company. It was the height of the Great Depression, and with a lot of borrowers at the time deemed to be very risky considering, the time of everything, the government employees insurance company actually was specifically marketed towards federal and certain military employees because they were deemed to be less risky than other employees in the United States workforce. So, Leo and Lillian are heroes of the day. They had founded the government employees insurance company in 1936. At the end of their first year, it's 1937, and they had 12 staff members, and they had already written 3,700 car insurance policies. So obviously the company at this point is growing very fast, and all through the rest of the 30s and into the 40s, they were growing very rapidly. Now, what does a company usually do when they're growing rapidly? They IPO. So of course GEICO did exactly that. But at this point it's 1948 and the Goodwins are looking to IPO their insurance company. So they go to a friend of theirs who is an investment banker. His name was Lorimer Davidson. Now my guy Lorimer, he helped the Goodwins find new investors for their company, to help assist in that growth. Now you know who one of the first investors was at this point in the IPO? Benjamin Graham. At the time, Graham was a professor at Columbia University in New York, and he also co-owned an investment firm called the Graham-Newman Corporation. Of course, Lorimer Davidson, he knew this about Graham's investment firm, so he goes to him, he's like, hey, you wanna just, send us some money, we'll give you some stock, that whole little exchange we're going for there. So Graham ended up investing $712,000 into GEICO in exchange for a 50% stake in the company at their initial public offering. Now, fast forward a couple years, the company's growing steadily, they're doing the whole insurance thing, and at this point, it's 1951. 1951 was a very special year because that was when Warren Buffett was actually a student of Benjamin Graham's at Columbia University. So Warren Buffett, being a student of Benjamin Graham at the time, he had learned about the whole story of GEICO. So he decided that he wanted to find out more because he was interested in investing in the company too. He decided to take a train down to Washington, D.C., where GEICO was headquartered at the time, so that he could find out more about the company. The problem with this is that Warren Buffett ended up taking the train down to the GEICO headquarters on a Saturday, and if you know anything about offices on Saturdays, they're usually not open on those days. Now you would think that maybe he would have done his homework on that one, but it's fine. So Warren Buffett gets to the headquarters not knowing that they're closed, and he finds a janitor there, and he starts talking to the janitor. And he's actually, he's like, hey, I'm here to speak with the people at GEICO. And the janitor actually referred Warren Buffett to Lorimer Davidson. So Lorimer and Warren, the two names on the top of the list for what you shouldn't name your kid in 2022, they ended up having a good conversation. And at this point, Warren had decided that he knew enough, and he was going to invest in GEICO for himself. At this point, Warren Buffett had become a board member of GEICO, and he was working with them all through the 50s and the 60s, and everything's going well for the company. All at the time, by the way, that Benjamin Graham in his company still owned that 50% stake in GEICO. By 1964, there were 1 million policyholders at the government employees insurance company, and by 1965, the company had collected $150 million in premiums alone. By 1966, the company had had already doubled its net income from the year before to $13 million. And going on from there, the company just kept growing. Now, of course, as you and I both know, if you are investing in a company that just continues growing, usually that means a great deal for a good investment in the company, right? So as you may recall, Benjamin Graham, he still owned a 50% stake in GEICO at this time. And it turned out that his $712,000 investment in 1948, by 1972, it was worth $400 million. That's a 562-fold increase on your initial investment. Not 562%, 562 times your initial investment. That 562-fold return on Benjamin Graham's money was over the course of 24 years, which is absolutely insane. So obviously this is a very heartwarming story, to say the least. But what's the problem with all of it? Well, the problem with that is that Benjamin Graham broke his own famous investing rules just to make that much of a profit. Allow me to explain. Like I said at the beginning, Benjamin Graham was known to be a very shrewd and stubborn investor. He had his rules and he did not deviate from these rules, right? One of those rules was a rule on diversification. Benjamin Graham, being a huge proponent of diversification, had always taught people that you should never put more than 5% of your portfolio in any individual stock. In fact, according to what we know today, Benjamin Graham typically owned about 30 stocks in his portfolio at any given time. However, that all changed with this GEICO investment. Remember that $712,000 initial investment in the company? That was 20% of Graham's portfolio. 1/5 of his portfolio was in this one company, which was 4 times what Graham had always recommended to other investors. I don't know about you, but that doesn't sound very intelligent investor to me. Benjamin Graham also had very strict rules on what made a good value investment in the first place. Among these rules was that a company's equity should be worth more than the stock price itself, and there were a bunch of other ones too. I'm pretty sure all those rules are like laid out in some book or something, not really sure though. One of these rules was that a stock should be sold as soon as it no longer meets the requirements of a good value investment. Now this is of course what Warren Buffett was initially taught by Benjamin Graham, and that's why when Buffett initially invested in GEICO in 1951, he sold after a 50% profit because that was what no longer made the company a good value investment. Graham, on the other hand, yeah, he threw all those rules out the window. For starters, Graham had bought GEICO as part of an IPO, and as we've all learned from recently, IPOs tend to be massively overpriced. GEICO was no exception to that. Not to mention, the company almost consistently sold way above any price that Graham would ever have bought any stock. In fact, over the entire 24-year period that Graham had owned GEICO, the company was growing rapidly, which was incredibly different from any other stock that Benjamin Graham had owned prior. You see, Graham was known for buying companies that were pretty much on the verge of failing, but they would usually have one last kind of hurrah right before going bankrupt. So that was how Graham made a lot of his money. As you can kind of tell from the story, GEICO was never, in the time that Graham owned it, it was never near any point of going bankrupt. But what did Graham think about all of this? Benjamin Graham actually completely admitted to the entire GEICO investment being all luck. Yeah, I know, right? So what's the lesson in all of this? Well, it's that Benjamin Graham was wrong about everything, and everything about this book sucks. I'll see you guys next time. No, okay, but really, the lesson is that sometimes you just get lucky, as much as I hate to say it. But the key here is to realize when an investment was just luck versus when it was actually a well-informed decision. Like, you don't want to be investing more and more money in a strategy where you just happen to get lucky once. You know what I mean? It's better to invest in a strategy that's actually been proven versus investing in a strategy where you just got lucky. And with that, thank you guys for watching. Follow me on Instagram if you want more stock content, and I'll see you next time. Columbia University So what did Benjamin Graham do? That's not what I'm supposed to say there. Graham had owned Buffett. What am I talking about?